Good evening, everybody. So, time to launch into something different. So tonight we're going to talk a bit about gold and how it relates to the different kinds of deposits that gold, that can be found on the surface of the earth. Okay, so here's the deal. When gold comes to the surface, typically it comes in the form of some form of lode, which could be, previous metamorphic material, could be igneous, or it could be some kind of sedimentary deposit. More likely it's going to be something along the lines of a quartz stringer. Any one of these things can deteriorate with time, and that gives rise to what we're going to talk about tonight, and that is residual, eluvial, and alluvial gold deposits. What's those? Well, we'll talk about that. I'm going to give you the definitions and show you a little bit of the ins and outs of why these things are there. It was requested by one of my Gold Workshop members, and I'm giving him a shout out. Thanks, Chris, for the input. And so it's one of those things that you'll want to kind of look closely at when you're looking at the hillside. So I'm going to give you kind of how these things form, but we're also going to want to take a step back because it's not often that you'll find them in the physical form I'm going to show, and I'll explain what I mean by that later. But with that said, let me draw you a picture. So go to the Chalk Talk, and we're going to kind of change it up a little bit here. I'm going to start with this. Let's start with what we got. So this is my hillside mountainside structure. So I've got some kind of hillside mountainside, and then over here I've got this funny looking place. And I might have several little cliffs down to a valley below, and then it kind of goes up. Now, everything inside of here is considered bedrock. That isn't necessarily, and that's something you want to keep your eyes peeled for when it comes, especially when it comes to alluvium and eluvium, kind of those deposit types. But the thing that I want to draw your attention to carefully is the source. So if the source were, say, a fissure running up through here, some kind of gold-bearing fissure that came up from someplace deep. So this is your lode. It all comes from lode of some sort, or it might come from it might be some supergene activity going on. So there's a halo in here. Remember we talked about the gold, or the other than gold stuff eluting out. Basically water in the water table area causing it to leach out. And so I'll draw the water table here. And there might be some springs on the side of this hill. But the idea is that this thing is going to collapse as the water table hits right in this area in here. You're going to have all kinds of interesting activity. And as the water table moves down, why does it move down? Well, because the river cut down here, okay? What's driving all of this stuff? Same thing that drives everything, okay? Gravity. Okay, so gravity pointing down toward the center of the earth is causing all of this erosion, corrosion, etc. to follow a path. And what we're doing is simply, that's the root cause. We're simply keeping that root cause in mind along with other things that might help us. Another root cause here is this supergene activity at this top of this hill where all this junk is rotten minerals and rocks. Now, as these rotten minerals and rocks start to break off, where do they go? They roll downhill, okay? Or they might even slump downhill in one big fell swoop. That's called a slump if there's some kind of rock slide. Okay, usually follows kind of an arc like this. So the idea is these are all rocks and minerals, and buried in those rocks and minerals is our good friend, and buried in this thing all along. So the source is up here, this lode. I'm drawing yellow bars for gold bars, okay? And they're not nuggets, they're just yellow mineralizations. Could be very fine micro gold, or it could be just fine gold, or it could be coarse gold, or it could be nuggets and crystalline gold chunks buried inside of this quartz, if it were a quartz stringer, okay? But the objective is, buried in some of these guys is gold pieces, gold particles and chunks, and maybe some other gold chunks, particles that are in the previous slides from times gone by. But the objective is these are all moving downhill, okay, downhill to deposit themselves into the stream. Now what I haven't drawn here is the stream. So let's put a little stream bed in here. And that is, I'm going to have it come up to this level. And so as that stuff begins to fill up the stream bed with rocks and minerals and whatnot, paint them purple or pink or something, purple. So we got all of our boulders and cobbles and whatnot here. As this thing starts to fill in, it forms that stuff we were looking at on the hillside, and that is an alluvial deposit begins to form. The bottom of which, remember, downhill, downstream, down to bedrock. So it's going to be charging over millennia, thousands and thousands of years, and filling the bottom here with little stringers of gold. They will, not stringers, little placer pastries, okay, that form on the bottom of this alluvial deposit. And so the basic structure we see here, let me draw, is yet another color. I'm fond of my colors here, aren't I? Okay, so let's try pale blue. So this is alluvial, A. Okay. This stuff kind of sliding down the hillside in various, gravitationally driven motion with some effect from wind and rain and whatever else, another rock, okay? This is E, eluvial, okay? And I want to call your attention in a second here. And then this up on the top here where there's a big dimple and there's some gold from this stuff up here. It's kind of concentrating. I haven't drawn that quite right. Let me show what happens up here. Not only does it go downhill, but it might back up on itself and form a little deposit, concentrating the gold right up in this top area here. And so there could be a really interesting deposit up there, if not the head of the lode stringer, okay? In which case that could be really valuable to find. Okay, now what's that guy? Well, that guy is our residual, R, okay? So that's residual there. This is eluvial, this whole thing from here down to here. It does, and here's one of the subtleties. Because E goes to A, okay, eluvial works its way into the stream bed, there's sort of a gray area between the two that becomes indistinguishable. Why is it important to distinguish? Well, partly because if you think everything is alluvial, everything is at the bottom of the stream bed, you miss out on the opportunity of a lifetime to find that residual or the lode, okay? Now I got your attention? So the thing here is, when you're trying to understand where the gold goes, where it is now and where it goes, you also want to think backwards using the root cause analysis that we have, how it got there, and therefore where it came from, because that's how you can find better stuff, you see? So we're working our way backward by looking from alluvial to eluvial to residual or lode. Oh, and I didn't draw the lode. So lode, okay? That's this thing here. And of course that would be the Rosetta Stone of everything. That would be, if I can find that lode, I could open a gold mine. Well, yeah, but placer's a lode mine too. It's just a different type of deposit. So the R, E, and A are all kind of placer deposits. One is a pocket placer, that's R. The E is a deposit in motion down the hillside, okay? And the A is a placer deposit, a more conventional placer, being an alluvial, riverborne deposit or concentration. Now the beauty about alluvial is that it concentrates like a sluice box. It'll concentrate using gravitational energy and effects of flow changes. And so it will follow all those things I teach in 2020. If you want to go find that, it was mentioned in our pre-show, I think, 2020 report. Look that one up, okay? Go to the sourdough miner, look it up. But basically what we're talking about there is the effects of water flow and how it drives gold. Well, that's what the business of A is all about. A is serious water flow issues and traps, okay, primarily. And so you're trying to understand those things as one distinctive thing. The E is an interesting thing, that eluvial deposit, because really it's representing kind of where the gold is coming from. It's a telltale. It may not be super rich. It may be, though. That's one of the gotchas with this whole thing, because it may have parked itself into an alluvial deposit in an earlier era, okay? In which case, it actually represents a hanging bench placer deposit. Could be extremely valuable, okay? And actually rather easy pickings because it comes to the surface at the edge of where the old river bottom was. That's why looking at these pictures that we had earlier, these ones, for example, are classic examples of the kind of thing you want to keep your eyes peeled for, specifically to where you can tell it's an older type of deposit. It's sort of locked in there and it's away from the river. It's up, 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 okay? And so that is one kind of thing to keep your eyes peeled for. But in the case of what we're doing here, we're basically looking at this eluvial, and the distinctive characteristic is going to be the particles. The rocks typically are going to be more sheared, they're going to be more jagged, okay, like this thing is on the edge, so it'll be chunks and jags, as opposed to rounded like it is on this, this side, or like, let me show you some of the other rounded ones. Here's a rounded one, for example. Okay, see how round that looks? And the idea is with that rounding, closer, okay, with that rounding, of course, you can see how the river has just worn this quartz chunk, which could contain gold, and has pockets that were blown out from pyrites that were used to be in this thing. So it's obviously had other metallic crystals in it. But in a case of an eluvial deposit, because it's breaking free after corrosion and erosion, it would tend to look more like this, chunky and jagged. Now this one I broke apart with a sledgehammer, different story, but same story, because it was weakened by my hammer. If it was weakened by chemical reactions and broke away because another rock tumbled down the hill and smacked into it, same sort of effect. You get the idea. But the idea is it's going to be jagged. It's going to have sharp, sharp edges. You can see how this thing's like glass. Well, it is glass. It's like razors. Okay. One thing I would caution you, if you're smacking into one of these things, they will cut you, and they can blind you if you don't wear goggles. So quartz is glass. Glass shatters. Stuff happens. So, ouch. Says he. Okay, so the idea there is that if it's jagged and it's coming down the hill, then up that hill might be some interesting stuff. If it's rounded, look for the layers. See the distinction? That's where you start using this thing and the little bit I'm just teaching you. The difference between the two can be night and day in terms of the results you ultimately find. One, you might find a nice alluvial ancient placer deposit. It could be interesting. Or you might find an alluvial trail that leads uphill to the mother lode. Okay? Both of those are interesting, aren't they? Let me know what you think down below. Comment and share. Like I said, check out this 2020 report offer. It kind of tells a little bit about how this water flow stuff in the alluvial deposit drives things, and kind of where we're going with this whole big picture, because the picture really is gold, and the ultimate idea is you find more of it. So that's what we're here to help you with. I just thought I'd drop this nugget on you tonight. Have fun, good prospecting, plan for the year, and let me know what you're doing. Take care, and good night, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Oh, and don't forget, subscribe to my channel over on YouTube. I'm going to be moving some of these things over to YouTube more. I think Facebook's kind of acting funny, so we're going to play some games here in the next few weeks and try some changing up. Watch your emails as well, because the email will have some additional reports of some of these videos that will draw your attention to important stuff regarding gold and finding more of it. Prospector Jess, over and out. Good night.